you're asking, what about atheists and agnostics? These people who don't believe in religion. There are a lot of good people, and this and that. And this is true. I have many agnostic and atheist friends who could be a lot better than a lot of religious people. But that to me does not mean that they don't have that God within them. They're guided by certain principles. They're guided by their conscience. And within their conscience, there's God. That God is sitting with them, and in silent voice, it tells them what is right and what is wrong. But it's very difficult. It is very difficult to say, I don't believe in anything, and then be submissive. Ultimately, if the whole human race becomes submissive, maybe there won't be a need for religion. We need religion because human race in general is still arrogant. We in general are not submissive. We in general are not humble toward one another. If that happens, if there's peace on earth, maybe, I don't know. But maybe forever, when we need this guidance from a source above. We in general may not be able to reach that ultimate maturity, to become godlike. But that's a good wish. That's a good goal to work toward. The wish for perfection. The wish that I can be godlike. And we should pursue this goal forever. You had raised this question before, the question of faith. What is faith? In the Baha'i Faith, Baha'u'llah will explain the question of real faith versus blind faith. Abdullah says, by faith is meant, first, conscious knowledge, and second, the practice of good deeds. Then he explains further that he does not ask us to follow him blindly. God has endowed man with a mind to operate as a torchlight and guide him to the truth. Read his words, consider his teachings, and measure their value in the light of contemporary problems, and the truth will surely be revealed to you, and you will appreciate the truth of his mission, as well as the true spirit he creates in whosoever follows his way. Then he explains that know ye that God has created in man the power of reason, whereby man is enabled to investigate reality. God has not intended man to imitate blindly his fathers and ancestors. He has endowed him with mind or the faculty of reasoning, by the exercise of which he is to investigate and discover the truth, and that which he finds real and true he must accept. He must not be an imitator or blind follower of any soul. He must not rely implicitly upon the opinion of any man without investigation. Nay, each soul must seek intelligently and independently, arriving at the real conclusion, and bound only by that reality. The greatest cause of bereavement and disheartening in the world of humanity is ignorance based upon blind imitation. It is due to this that wars and battles prevail from the cause of hatred and animosity and continually amongst mankind. So he goes on and explains further that and advises humanity that in order to do this, we have to search for truth, we have to use our mind and intelligence by ourselves to find it. Otherwise it becomes blind faith. I believe because I believe. That doesn't mean anything. That's blind faith. This is based on imitation. And that is basically forbidden in the Baha'i Faith. We have to search for truth. We have to find it. We have to search for it. We have to investigate until we're convinced of the reality of things. So in order to do this, then he further advises, he says, sanctify your souls from whosoever is not of God, and taste ye the sweetness of rest within the pale of his vast and mighty revelation, and beneath the shadow of his supreme and infallible authority. Suffer not yourselves to be wrapped in the dense veils of your selfish desires, in as much as I have perfected in every one of you my creation, so that the excellence of my handiwork may be fully revealed unto men. So all of this tells us that the process of faith is doing good deeds, but together to do good deeds, constant searching, conscious knowledge, not imitating, searching for truth, and then with purity of heart, without self, without the barrier of self, and detached from anything else but God. And then when we do this, we come to the point of certitude. We are certain of reality of certain things. So if we come to believe that Baha'u'llah's mission is a true mission, he is the manifestation of God for this age. His teaching, including oneness of mankind, oneness of essence of religions, oneness of God, equality between men and women, independent search for truth, harmony of science and religion, the importance of auxiliary language, the importance of economic justice and economic equity, and abolition of extremes of wealth and poverty, and not imitating others, this abolition of prejudices, superstitions, and unfounded dogmas, and all these teachings. If we come to realization, this is a vision that I accept. If we accept that Baha'u'llah, who was in imprisonment and exile all his life, all his adult life, and he gave so much, the Bab and Baha'u'llah. The Bab executed, and Baha'u'llah basically, when he departed this world in 1892, after 40 years of persecution and incarceration, and then someone who was not educated, he gave us 100 volumes of teachings for this world that even the most learned of scientists can never have this kind of vision, because this was from God. So if you're convinced of the reality and truth of this religion, then you accept it. Then, at that point, then he has a book of laws. Then he tells us that you have searched, you're convinced, and you say, I'm a Baha'i, by your will. Nobody forced anyone to accept any religion, and we should never force our children to accept these teachings, except if it is through their own volition. And after we come to that point, then he has a set of laws. He tells us to pray. He has obligatory prayers. He's given us the choice of 3 different kinds. He tells us about fasting. He tells us about his administrative order and universal justice, and local assemblies and national assemblies, and the rights and privileges, and who should do what in terms of women's duties and men's duties, and so many other laws. Then at that point, it is not really fair to keep asking, it seems to me. Why did Baha'u'llah ask us to have 3 kinds of prayers? Why do we have to have obligatory prayers and then other kinds of prayers? These questions, if you want to clarify in our own mind, is fine. If there's a minute question as to should I celebrate this holiday in this manner or in that manner, should all countries have the same kind of celebration, and these things, always universal justice clarifies them for us. But sometimes it becomes circular logic. Why 3 prayers, why not 4 prayers? Why 4 prayers, why not 2 prayers? There are no answers to this. At that point is a point, that is the question of faith. Do you believe in Baha'u'llah or don't you believe in Baha'u'llah? You believe in him as the messenger of God for this age? Do you humble yourself before him? Do you say that I accept him and I know that I'm an insignificant and fallible human being? I've done my best to search, and I've come to this point of certitude, and I accept him. At that point, you follow his laws. And you know, in this path of faith, there are tests and triumphs. Sometimes I think I have faith, but then when it comes to the question of practicing it, I may defy it. I may not do it. I may deviate from it. This is perhaps I was not deep enough. So, but then the point, when I become deepened, then I follow it. But this test continues. Baha'u'llah in the passage has reminded us that there are those who may have done all the good things, all the right things, until the last moment. But then at the last moment, they do something that sort of destroys everything they've done. But the reverse is also true. There's those who may have been a vile individual for all his life, but then it comes to the point of real recognition of the mission of Baha'u'llah, of the sacrifice of all the manifested God. He humbles himself before God, before manifestations, and asks for repentance, and asks for forgiveness. So at that point, he may very well be accepted by God. That he wants sincerity from us. If that person is truly sincere, there's a good chance that God will forgive him. So that's also one of those are among the tests and trials that we have to go through in order to become further purified. You had asked this question before. What do you mean by God? Why do you always mention God? Baha'u'llah has clarified that for us too. We can never understand the nature of God. Baha'u'llah explains God as the embodiment of virtues. Goodness, purity, sanctity, pure heart, detachment, kindness, compassion. If somebody understands all these things and looks at it as its totality, as God, that becomes the personal God, versus the transcendent God that is beyond our imagination. He's the creator. We are the created. We can't fathom the nature of God, but we can visualize these virtues. And Baha'u'llah says, that's good enough. That is your personal God. And so we relate to that kind of God. And of course, always also through manifestations of God. He also tells us that transcendent God in that fashion, we can't really visualize him. But we can visualize the manifestations. They have brought the teachings. They have had a life on this earth. They are the perfect mirror of what God is. And therefore, if some Christians say Jesus is God, in that sense, it's understandable. He's the one that they could see. He's the one that they could see his sacrifice for humanity. And as such, he's the symbol of God on this earth. And that's good enough, because he was the perfect example. Well, on the question of what is religion and why do we need religion, let me read a couple of passages from the Holy Writings, from the Baha'i Faith. Abu says, the holy manifestations who have been the sources of or founders of the various religious systems were united and agreed in purpose and teaching. Abraham, Moses, Zoroaster, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, the Bab, and Baha'u'llah are one in spirit and reality. Moreover, each prophet fulfilled the promise of the one who came before him, and likewise each announced the one who would follow. Know that the holy manifestations, though they have the degrees of endless perfections, yet speaking generally, have only three stations. The first station is the physical, the second station is the human, which is that of the rational soul, and the third is that of the divine appearance and the heavenly splendor. Well, ultimately, people of faith who search the faith based on what we said in another segment, that you consciously search and find the truth, the people of faith believe that there is God. That's another question by itself. And then when they find there is God, they say that there's a need for educator, for divine educator. The divine educator like Jesus or Buddha or Baha'u'llah, who come to guide us. And then many of us, myself, Baha'is in general, we come to the conclusion that without these divine educators, it's impossible to understand God. We understand God through these messengers. And these messengers have their teachings. Otherwise, without their teachings, somebody may say that I'm a good person, but I don't believe in this and that. That goodness is based on what God is. That goodness is the teaching of prophets with regard to chastity and purity and devotion and submission. So, and that is the point of submission, because without these manifestations, there's a good chance we become arrogant, we become selfish, we become self-centered. Faith, and this pure faith, and this believing in God, and this believing in the teachings of manifestation of God, put us on a path of humility, put us on a path of not being arrogant, put us on a path of detachment, of selflessness, and submission. And when we submit to the will of God, this self goes away, and we are on the path of understanding religion, the true meaning of religion, and the true meaning of God. Okay, there's the question of what we call progressive revelations, which means that all religions are somehow connected. And in the words of Baha'u'llah, they are truly one spirit, because they believe there's one God, there is the one spirit, but they have come at different times. So from the Baha'i perspective, all of them at this age lead to Baha'u'llah, the manifestation of God for this age. There is a lot of sources explaining these, but I begin with Baha'u'llah's work, Kitab-i-Iqan, or Book of Certitude, which really lays the foundation of how religions are related and how those stories in the Old Testament, New Testament, Quran should be further analyzed for better understanding. So one source for it is Baha'u'llah's Book of Certitude. The other is Abdul Baha's Some Answered Questions, where he delves into a number of questions with regard to manifestation of God and the truth of previous religions and the prophecies with regard to coming of Baha'u'llah for the New Age. Some Answered Questions. The other book that we should refer to is Shoghi Effendi's God Passes By, where he also refers to prophecies for the Bab, the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, and Baha'u'llah, the manifestation of God for this age. There is a lot of detail there. There are a number of other authors who have dealt with this issue. I believe Hushidar Mutlaq, who has written a number of books on prophecies and fulfillment of prophecies. Gary Matthews is another author who has written a number of things that we can find them online. In addition, the other books that I have that deal extensively with prophecies, one of them is Baha'u'llah and the New Era, where over 100 years ago, maybe less than 100 years, in 1920s, this is one of the early Baha'is, Dr. Esselmont, who wrote this book, Baha'u'llah and the New Era, and a good section of it deals with prophecies, particularly from Christian perspective, with regard to fulfillment of prophecies by Baha'u'llah. The other book written by another Baha'i, an American Baha'i, William Sears, who became a hand of the cause, who deals extensively also with many prophecies from the Old Testament and New Testament with regard to its fulfillment through Baha'u'llah, called Thief in the Night. That's also another good source. Another interesting source really is this small book called Christ and Baha'u'llah by George Townsend. George Townsend was Archbishop in Ireland, had a very high position in the church, and in 1940s he became a Baha'i. And then of course he had to resign from his job. I guess it took a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And he was a very able and trusted assistant for Shoghi Effendi, who was assigned by Shoghi Effendi to translate or refine some rough draft or translation of certain works, including, I believe, the hidden words. And he wrote this book, Christ and Baha'u'llah, dealing with how Baha'u'llah is the fulfillment of prophecies that Jesus Christ had predicted. So this would become a very lengthy video, so rather than going through all that, my suggestion is that whoever is interested really needs to go to these sources and look at prophecies for themselves. Thank you.